Welcome back to the Doc Y Exchange. We've got a special episode today as we continue to honor Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm excited to introduce my guest, Dr. Michael Lehrfeld, Associate Professor of Computing at ETSU and an expert in the field of cybersecurity. Today, we're diving into a topic that impacts all of us. How do we protect ourselves online? Whether you're a parent, a student, or just someone trying to stay safe in this increasingly digital world, this episode is for you. Dr. Learfield, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young, for having me. Really excited to help everybody kick off Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's a wonderful time if you're in cybersecurity land to be able to evangelize and tell people about why we do the things we do, why we make people change passwords, and why we have all these complex systems in place. But it also is a great time for normal people to be able to just reflect on some of their computing hygiene and make sure that they're doing everything they can do to protect themselves.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to jump right on in. So to kick off Cybersecurity Awareness Month, it's a big initiative, as you explained. But what does it mean to you in your role at ETSU? And even I know you've transitioned, but
Mhm.
to your role, the roles you've fulfilled here at ETSU, what does it mean to you? And how do you engage with this in your day to day work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I was formerly the university's chief information security officer. So, I spent many months preparing for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, outreaching with different units within the organization, from students to faculty to staff to researchers to medical practitioners, all across the region, really, and just the nice thing about Cybersecurity Awareness Month is that it gave us a reason, it gave me a reason to engage with people. It cybersecurity in general tends to be a stopgap for organizations, or an area where there's um, a, a point where the organization says no. I have a researcher that wants to do something really creative. Can I do this? And then IT or cybersecurity says, well, you need to do it securely, so there's going to be some problems. So it's an opportunity for the IT and cybersecurity people to reach out and explain why we do what we do and the importance that it has to the organization, and to helping them do their jobs in a more productive and effective way. So I always enjoy Cybersecurity Awareness Month, talking to people, because I get to hear stories, good and bad, and I think we'll uncover some of those during this podcast, where people will come up to me and tell them, "Hey, we did this and it worked," or "We didn't do this and we ran into these problems."
Yes. So cybercrime is always a concern, 365
Yeah.
all year long. But are there specific times of the year when we see a rise in cyber attacks, or is it something that can just happen at any time?
So there's a couple different layers to that question. If you're an organization, if you work for a company that has intellectual property or critical infrastructure like the power board, water, something like that, those entities tend to go in cyclical waves, where there'll be a new attack from a threat actor that's out there. So that may be a nation state, or it may be an organization, but they are constantly under attack. And same with the university, although we see at the university very much more a cyclical pattern. The beginning of the school year is very popular for phishing attacks. The finals is a popular time. People going into summer break and saying they need summer jobs. So I'm going to send you a phishing email that says, I've got a great job for you. You can work from home. We'll pay you a lot of money. I just need your bank account to be able to pay you. And so that sort of happens. So depending upon who you are and where you are, you may see things in a cyclical pattern, or you may just be a constant bombardment. The recent hurricane and natural disasters that hit North Carolina and East Tennessee, along with the latest hurricane that's going through Florida. I'm a Florida boy, so I've been talking to a lot of people in Florida as another hurricane is winding up to hit them. That is a perfect opportunity, not only for cybercrime, but just for thieves in general, shamsters, to be able to call people on the phone, knock on their door, try to sell a roof to someone that has a roof in disrepair and take half their money and run. So natural disasters are absolutely one of those things. And then while I was thinking about that, the election cycle is upon us. So in a month, we go to the polls. This is so anytime something large in the national eye, in the national news media comes on, that's really an opportunity for some of these creative criminals to take a swipe at people to try to fraud them.
Absolutely. So let's get into the practical side of things then.
Yes.
So we hear about the cybersecurity. We hear about the different instances. You turn on the news. I don't know any news channel that doesn't say something about the hurricanes right now. I don't know any news channel that doesn't talk about the elections. So, but
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the simple everyday actions people can take to protect themselves online?
Yeah, that's really good, and that's really what Cybersecurity Awareness Month is what type of common sense things can we do to make these complex devices that we carry around in our pocket and tie our entire financial and online identity to? How do we keep them safe? And so the CISA, which is the organization that is the main security organization for the federal government, it releases kind of what they believe to be the main topic points of Cybersecurity Awareness Month in 2024. And so going through those, I was just looking at those, and I think they'll resonate really well with people because we've been talking about them for a while. The first one is around using strong passwords. So being in Tennessee, we did a security audit of passwords once, and I found dozens and dozens of passwords of employees, not at ETSU, but of employees that had their password set as Go Vols One because Tennessee Volunteers. Or it could be Go Vols Fall or Go Vols Spring, Go Vols Summer, right? Or some iteration of that. Using a password that is comprised of really, really easy to guess words like that, it can be problematic. So using a strong password, the best advice I can give is to use a long sentence, maybe 14, 16 characters. That's usually where we see things to be really good. And the nice thing about passwords is that they don't have to be complex. I don't necessarily need to have an uppercase, lowercase, special character, wingdings, and pictures of my dog as part of my password. The length is usually an important factor in that. So you can come up with row, row, row your boat and put an exclamation point at the end. That's a really good password, and it's really easy to remember. So come up with your favorite color, the month you were born, and a couple other words in there. And as long as it's 14, 16 characters long, that's a really good way to come up with a good, strong password.
Wow.
Yeah, it's different, right? Because we've been told
Yes.
complex. And
Right.
so I talk with this when I discuss this with students. Passwords and cracking passwords really is a mathematical problem. Cryptography is math, and so breaking cryptography comes down to math. And the length of a password is much more important than the complexity of a password. I'm not saying complexity is bad. I'm saying you actually need to have a password you can remember. That's more important than all these uppercase, lowercase, because we're talking about normal people. Not everybody's a nerd like me and has to think about cybersecurity stuff all the time. When I talk to my parents, come up with something that a couple words, a couple phrases, maybe a favorite song when you got married, whatever. Pick that out. That's a great, strong password that they can use. And when you couple that with MFA, which is where they text your cell phone, or you have the Microsoft Authenticator app or the Google Authenticator app, those two things really do enable us to secure our online identities. And that is step number one, in being cyber secure is making sure that you have good passwords and an MFA where they send you a text or an email or some other secondary authentication point. So those two things really, really important. And just to kind of add a caveat to that, one of the things when I talk with other groups, I ask them to all of your banking information, create a separate email address for that. Just a throwaway email. It won't be throwaway, but you only use it to log into your bank. And that way, you know that if you get a phishing email to your regular email account from your bank, you know it's not true because they don't have that email. They have this other email. So using a secondary email account that's only used for your banking, financial, retirement, whatever, wherever your most important money, your assets are, that's a really good way to help kind of separate
Wow.
your online identities. Because what happens many times is that you'll go buy jeans at the Gap and you give them your email, and then the Gap will get compromised, and now that user ID, your email and password is out there. So if we can separate the two, it just adds another layer of protection for people.
That is that is some great advice. I have those separate emails, but I never thought about using one for the financial institution separate from the other. So, like, I have a junk mail
Yes.
that's just for all the spam
Yep.
stuff, but that would be very, very wise to develop one that's only for financial institutions. And then I know, like you said, if somebody sends
Yeah.
me email to these others saying your bank account has been compromised, click on this link to reset X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, that didn't come from. So thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So now, go
We
ahead.
tr- yeah, we try to make it. I try to make it as practical for people to be able to use, because computers are tools and we shouldn't be slaves to these computers. I want them to
Yes,
do the job for me. I don't want them to make my life more difficult. And we've kind of flip
right.
flopped that in a lot of ways.
Right. Remembering passwords. I mean, even what you said about passwords, because, coming up with a password that is difficult
Yes.
sometimes makes it more difficult for us than it does for the bad actors.
Exactly.
So now many of us are familiar with phishing emails, but can you
Mhm.
break down some of the different types of scams that we should be on the lookout for? Even things like vishing. But what
Yeah.
else is there out there?
So it's amazing at how creative these bad actors are. So we have phishing emails, which are phishing and spam emails, junk emails, right? Then we have vishing, which are voice calls, right? And those are really starting to come on strong. Same thing with SMS or text messages. So we're seeing a kind of a trifecta of communications that are coming at people, and it's hard to tell sometimes what is legitimate and what is not. Um, for example, my mother-in-law um, received a phone call from what she thought was her nephew that was in jail and needed bail money. And the bad actor kept saying, "Well, you can't call my wife because I don't want her to know, because we're having marital troubles. So I just need you to send $30,000 to the bail office so that I can get out, and I'll make sure I pay you back." And it was a series of phone calls that went on, and they're very, very good. So it's not just phishing emails, it's also phone calls, SMS, text messages. So, and they're very good at what they do. And one of the things I want to make sure that everybody understands, Dr. Young, is that the phishing emails, voice and text, it's not just a problem with the elderly, with old people.
That's
Because
right.
I've talked to my daughter, and I would never fall for that. That's just an old person's thing. No, 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 no. The research is very clear about this, that we have a very equal distribution across the age curve of people getting compromised in this. So it's not just an old person, okay, boomer issue. It's a, hey, I get busy sometimes, and sometimes I'm doing some work and I just happen to click the link that gets sent in. I didn't realize it. So it's very challenging. So one of the things that I tell people, always, always go to the website, go directly to the website that you think you should be going to, right? That's probably step number one. Don't click on the link and then put in your user ID and password. That's not what you want to do. If you're getting an email from the Gap because they're having a sale, you can just type in the Gap and go right to their website. So that's generally a first precautionary tale. The second thing is you can actually report cybercrime. So one of the things that we try to get people to do is to go to the FBI's website. It's called IC3.gov. So so I and then the letter C, 3.gov. And that is the Internet Crimes and Complaint Center that's hosted by the FBI. It's an exchange, if you will. So if you click on a website and you get swindled out of $5,000, you should absolutely call your local police municipality and report that crime. You should also go to ic3.gov and fill out a form there, because what that does is it goes into a clearinghouse, and you may have fallen victim, but so may have 150 other people. And so the FBI or whatever the authority of that that particular crime would take that information, bundle it up together, and then open an investigation. And I've seen this where people that have reported crimes online and filled out at ic3.gov, and they've actually gotten restitution. It was a couple of years later, but they were able to get their money back. That doesn't happen all the time, but it's a great way to report these types of activities that occur online. It could be that you got swindled out of money. It could be that you bought something. One of the cases that was worked a while ago was one where they ordered a dog. It was a puppy mill, and they ordered a dog, and the dog that arrived was not in the shape basically it was a swindle. So it was a bait and switch. Enough people put that into this website, the FBI was able to go out and arrest and seize all the assets and then dissolve those and get restitution to those people. So it's very important. I would not expect the FBI to come knocking on your door the day after you fill that out, but it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. Did I get the website right? I want to make sure.
Yes. Yep.
All
IC3.gov.
right.
Yes. Internet
All right.
Crimes and Complaint Center.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Um, it's it's amazing to think that we have to even think about that now,
Yeah.
because I know growing up that was not something that we had to think about. But if we, like you said, if enough people report it, then there is a greater chance that those who have been victimized can potentially get restitution
Yeah.
for that crime. All right, so for parents listening, and I know we're both parents, protecting our children and protecting parents protecting their children online is often top of their minds. What are some key steps parents can take to safeguard children's identity, their digital identity, and set them up for success in this connected world?
Yeah, this is a challenging one. There are so many different resources out there for kids to get into trouble with, whether it be pornography or the dark web or cyberbullying. There's so much coming at these young ones now that I'm a firm believer in. Step one is talk to your kid. Talk to them about what they're accessing. What are they doing? What platforms are they on? Be open and honest. It's one thing that I've learned over the years, and I'm not a psychologist. This is just, Dad Mike talking. But it's don't be so quick to pull those social networking tools away from their kids, especially after COVID and during COVID too. where that was one of their main tools that they use to interact and grow with each other. So it's a balancing act. As a parent, I'm always asking my daughter, how are you doing? How are their friends doing? Is there anything weird going on online? Did anybody say anything that was inappropriate? So I try to open up that dialogue and be understanding to them, knowing, and this is the hard part for people that are in my generation, that we're raising our kids and we're trying to get them out the door to be productive humans, that they interact differently than we did. Like, we didn't have cell phones growing up. We didn't text. I had a party line, for crying out loud. So it was the, pick up the phone and there might be the neighbor on the phone. So totally different ways of communicating. So I always encourage people, talk to your young ones, and then try to, when you can, it's really hard. This is really hard with iPads, but try to keep the technology and the streaming video in open areas. So, the student's not going back to their room and spending 5 hours just online without any type of interaction or understanding of what's going on. So that communication piece is really important. There's also some other websites that I will send you, Dr. Young, that have some really good information about privacy settings that you can set
Okay.
up, like through Facebook or Instagram or whatever the social media site might be. So there's some really good resources out there that I will send to you that you can post for your listeners. But it goes through details of being able to, this setting and that setting and how to navigate it, because some of these apps are insanely confusing and trying to
For
set the right
real.
right. So it's nice to have a guide. So that's kind of what this is a guide. And there's a couple, there's 50 or 60 different applications in there.
Wonderful. Um, yes, as soon as you send that to me, I will be sure to post it for our listeners to make sure that they have access to it and that they can use those resources, because
Yeah.
it's good to have it available. But if you don't know about it, it's
Yeah.
not it's not any good to us. But as professors, even outside of computer science, what are some ways we can bring more awareness to our students about the importance of cybersecurity?
Yeah.
And then how can we weave that into the fabric of education without actually overwhelming them and scaring them?
I always try to bring a smile when I talk about cybersecurity. I want to be an enabler. I don't want to be the curmudgeon that comes in that says, no, you can't. Right. So I have a very acute understanding, working in business and then working in the administration at ETSU, that the business is there to do business, which is not cybersecurity. Right. Cybersecurity is helps the business and can add value to whatever it is. It might be to making cars, or it could be to teaching classes, or whatever they're doing. So being able to add that and incorporate that in a way that is intelligent. So one of the things that I've taken to with other faculty members is we I talk about security in general. So um, the elections are coming up. Well, how do we stay safe if there are protests? What do you do? What's your plan? What's your plan for your physical body? At ETSU, we had an active shooter alert back in mid-September of this year. Thankfully, it was a false alarm. What do you do? And I'm always telling students that you're responsible for your physical security. And so they start to, well, what do you mean? Well, if something happens like that, the police come in, they're going after the suspect. They're not there to help you or anybody else that had a heart attack or a broken leg or cut themselves. That is after the building has been cleared. So you're responsible. So helping them understand that we're there to help, but at the same time, there is an onus on the individual to come up and be able to understand that. So I try to tie cybersecurity in with physical security because they are tightly related. Um, and I tell them it's not something to stress about. It's not something to worry about, but it's something to be aware of. Like, and it
Mhm.
starts to become muscle management, like buckling your car seat when your seatbelt when you get into the car. That, when we were growing up, we didn't wear seatbelts. It was, it was really in the 80s and the 90s when they started to say, hey, you need to have laws and do this. Drunk driving was a thing, but it wasn't really talked about until
No.
the late 80s, early 90s. So it's recreating and grooving new norms and new patterns for us. And cyber and physical security is 100% going to be a part of that. For good, bad, or indifferent, it is, right? So uh, I always give antidotes and talk about things that have happened. One of the stories I like to tell at ETSU, we had an event where we had a large phishing attack happen at the institution that was targeting students, and it was a money mule event. So what that basically means is the bad guys were looking for someone to do a money mule, money laundering scheme with them. So they said to these individuals, well, they sent it to thousands of students, but what they said was, hey, I'm from the Ukraine, or I'm from a depressed country, or I'm from somewhere where the laws are really bad and I'm being persecuted, and I'm trying to get me and my family out of this situation, but I'm having trouble getting my money out. I'd like to send you $10,000. What I want you to do is go to the bank, you cash that check, and you just send me $5,000. You keep the other $5,000 for you, right? And so that's basically how that goes. And it is illegal to do that money laundering type activity. And we actually had people fall victim to that. And so that money was just gone, right? So we had them, report it to the police and report it through the FBI, but it's very problematic. And it's not because these people are, because I talked to some of the
Yeah.
victims. It's not that they were greedy. It's not that they were doing it because they were feeling that they honestly thought they were trying to help somebody
Yeah.
and move that along. So it is really hard. And so through stories that have actually happened is kind of how we learn to, hey, maybe, this is something this is serious. And this impacted students. This goes back to my statement earlier, where it's not just an old person problem.
Mhm.
This is a any age problem, and being able to think critically through these things.
Wow. So now, as we look to the future, how do you see cybersecurity evolving?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, right? Like, where do we go? We're getting so much more interconnectedness. Like with the hurricanes that came through North Carolina and Tennessee, in order to get aid from FEMA, you have to go online. There might be some locations where you can do a pen and paper, but the majority of the applications are online. Filing taxes, paying for everything is becoming much more digital, and we're relying more on our end devices. So that means we're relying more on Apple, Google, Microsoft as really our identity providers. And so that's why it's so important for us to understand and use that idea of a long password, having MFA set up, and creating separate email accounts for your bank, because your digital identity is critical to your physical identity and what you're able to do. If you've ever lost your job and had to apply for unemployment, all online. It's all online in direct deposit. So what's happening societally is that we're moving to a digital cashless almost society, and people are being trained and bombarded, especially in the United States, with telemarketers calling them, and companies are constantly selling their email addresses and their phone numbers. My father-in-law, we just got him a brand new landline not 1 month ago, and just today he got a call from Publishers Clearinghouse. He doesn't make any phone calls. The phone number's out there. So companies are selling our data to these data brokers. And so what's happening is that we're training and desensitizing people. And so the job of cybersecurity really is to counteract that and try to help people understand what the bad guys are doing. And by bad guys, it may just be a marketing firm, but they're
Mhm.
coming at you and they're sending you these emails and they're sending you these envelopes that look legitimate. And it's a little bit on the gray market side of being totally upright and what we want our kids and our students to do. But those are things that are challenges. And then you type, you dump into that AI and the automation that we can get. As a bad guy, I could send out 1 billion email addresses like that. It doesn't cost me anything. So I'm just going to send it out all over the world. And if I get 2 victims, that's a good day. So it's automating. And so one of the challenges we had when I was in cyber at ETSU was how we had a dial that we could turn and say, how strict do we want to be on our spam and phishing filter? I could make it more strict, so I would block more emails, but the problem might be I might actually block a legitimate email. So then we would dial it back, and then more phishing emails come in, and people could. So it's a constant game of adjustment and cat and mouse on how all of this functions, which is why I love the field, but I understand why normal people, my parents, my wife, get frustrated with it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And just finding that balance between um, the two worlds of like how much do you allow and how much is prohibited, and
Mhm.
not being so scared that you don't interact,
Yeah,
to being aware and that you do react to what's going on around you. That's finding that balance is very difficult. And um it's funny that you mentioned the cashless society. We were coming through because South Carolina got hit too.
hmm,
And my husband's family lives in South Carolina. And so we went and checked on people in North Carolina and South Carolina just this past weekend. And as we were coming back, we stopped by one of our places that we like to eat. And on the window, it kind of shocked me because it said cash only. And I was prepared, but I wasn't, because I immediately started thinking about what if somebody lost everything and they had no way to get cash? Because a
yeah,
lot of people there, they have no electricity, so they have to go to places that are open to get food. And so if that's one of the places that they chose to go, but they couldn't get to the ATM because they lost their wallet for some reason, or the ATM didn't have service for their bank because maybe they were at a smaller bank, and or
yeah,
the only branch that is open is located on the other side of town. They can't get over there for whatever reason because
yeah.
the gas in their community, the gas pumps are out, no ex, just a lot of different factors, but they could potentially not have cash available. And so I was just having that conversation. I was like, I think we need to make sure that we're prepared for either, extreme
Mhm.
if anything does happen, especially with how things are changing and the weather and what we just experienced
Mhm.
recently. So what trends, you kind of touched on this, but what trends
Mhm.
or emerging technologies should we be aware of, and what can we expect probably in the next few years?
So we mentioned AI, and so the quality of the phone calls, text messages, and emails that we're going to get from adversaries is going to increase. So it's going to become even more important that we go directly to the website that we want to, our Bank of America or, you know, whatever website. Go directly there, bookmark it in your browser, and you'll be all set. So that's really one thing that we're seeing. The second one is the integration of our federal and state documents into our digital devices. So Apple has come a long way with this. I think there are 16 or 17 states. Tennessee's not on the list yet, but I think Virginia was coming online, California, where you can actually store your driver's license in your Apple wallet. So you don't even need a physical license anymore. It's stored on your phone. Well, that's an interesting proposition, especially if you've talked to people that have trouble having cell phones and maintaining them and making sure that they stay intact. Like these kids, they come in with different cell phones every other month, it seems like, because they're dropping it, they're losing it, they're swapping it, whatever. So we're seeing that come on more and more where there's some efficiencies to be gained from that. Yes, but what do we do when society kind of takes a sidestep and we don't have power for 3 days?
Right.
Like that's going to be a challenge. So thinking through this takes me back to the days of the wild west, where any day you never knew there might be a buffalo that would run through your house, or there might be bad guys coming and shooting down your door. Well, those people had plans. Like they knew that if there was a buffalo herd coming, they knew what they were going to do. Well, we've kind of backed off that in our society. We have a safe society. We don't really think that way anymore. Well, there might be a time that this might be a time where we start to think about what would we do if we lost power for 3 days?
Yes.
What's our plan? Coming from Florida, this was a little bit much more ingrained into me, because during hurricane season, this is what we did. But for other areas of the country, we didn't have to worry about it. It could be an ice storm, right? We get an ice storm and we're out of power for 4 or 5 days. How do you stay warm? What type of food? How do you make sure you have perishable goods? One of the funniest things that we used to do when hurricanes used to hit in Florida was fill the bathtubs up and plug them. So fill them up with water and plug them. So that way, if we lost power and we lost water, we still had water that we could use to flush the commodes. You don't
Hmm.
think about that until of like day 2 of not having any water. You're like, I'm never going through that again. So
Right.
you have different ways of coping, but coming up with a plan, I think, is going to be absolutely critical for families. What do you do if you're at work and that your spouse is not, and how do you reunite? Those are things that people really need to think through, so that you're just not caught off guard. You don't have to obsess on it. It's not something you talk about every day at dinner, but it is something that we want to make sure that we're communicating and we're all on the same page, so we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, having a plan, because the saying is fail to plan, then plan to fail. And just like we would have a disaster relief plan in place, because I lived in Tallahassee also. And
Mhm.
so I know it's very different from Southern Florida or even from Central Florida down, but there were still hurricanes and all
Right.
kinds of things that came right in that pocket around Tallahassee. But having a plan helped us to be in those moments, and we knew exactly what to do. We knew where to go. We knew um, how to get the assistance that we need, because I can only imagine, like, say, if North Carolina or Tennessee had adopted the idea of putting their license on their phone. Cell service has been down for
Yeah.
most of the parts that have been tremendously hit. And so, how do you provide identification for people who are signing up for assistance, say, like
Right.
with FEMA or anything
Mhm.
like that? How do you actually get into the systems to get that, unless it's actually stored on the device? But if you've been without power, how do you
Yeah.
charge that
How do you charge
device?
it? So
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's so as we move technology forward, there's cyber issues, there's physical issues, there's public safety issues, that all kind of interweave with each other, and that's what makes this field exciting, but also makes it challenging,
right.
because it just impacts everybody.
Oh, wow. Well, so thank you so much. We've actually come to the end of our time, but I want to leave space for you if there are any parting words that you want to share with the listeners.
Yeah, that's thank you so much for having me. And if anybody ever has any cyber related, internet related crimes, go to that ic3.gov website and report it there. It's the best thing that we can do as a country, is to report this stuff, and hopefully we'll start to slowly combat it and prevent these cyber criminals from making money and having them go away. So really appreciate all your time and what you're doing, Dr. Young. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so very much. This has been an amazing conversation. I thank you for agreeing to take time out and actually have this conversation with me. So, Dr. Learfield, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It's clear that cybersecurity isn't just a technical issue, it's something that affects every aspect of our lives. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts, what you're doing to protect yourself online. Don't forget to participate in the poll below, and we'll see you next time on the Doc Y Exchange.